Okay, there we go. Now we're live. If you're watching, please say hi so we can see who's watching. If you're watching on Chabad.org, say hi. It's exciting to be here. We're going to say L'chaim. There we go. Because today is a very, very happy day for the Jewish people. Baruch Hashem, 843 days. 843 days is a very, very long time. Longer than I can count. It's a long time. And for the last 843 days, we've had a constant reminder that the Jewish people are all one family and one people and united as one. Now, so first of all, before you say there we go. So L'chaim is today, whenever the Jews experience something good, we say thank you to Hashem, and we offer praise and thanks. If you saw today, Bibi Netanyahu spoke in the Knesset, right? He took a kippah out of his pocket, put it on his head. He made a blessing of thanks to Hashem, and he kept the kippah on for the rest of his speech. But and that's what we all need to do. Hopefully, we're already wearing a kippah, but if not, put a kippah on there. Mentally put a kippah on to make a moment of recognition. And for the Jewish people, today is a very happy day. So l'chaim, from this geula, from this redemption, and this liberation of a part of all of Klal Yisrael and Am Yisrael has been sitting in captivity, should come the ultimate salvation and the ultimate liberation, that we should go truly, truly to freedom. We should leave the emotional Gaza, etc. L'chaim. Yes. That's right. I saw someone posted that. That's right. That in this week's parsha, today's Torah reading, it has that the bones of Joseph were taken out of Egypt. That's correct. That's actually very, very powerful. Very powerful. You should know that whatever happens in life is in the Torah reading of the week. Always. And if you come to my classes, you know this. It's something I live with. I write about this. Always, the Torah. The Alter Rebbe said this. The Alter Rebbe said we have to live with the times. Which means, how are you? The Alter Rebbe said that you have to live with the times, which means that when you look in the Torah reading of the week, you'll always find messages for the times. By the way, you're not late. This is a pregame. Today, we're ready to go to the pregame, a warm-up, because the Jewish people are happy. Okay. Come sit over here. This is fine. Sit over there is also good. Okay. Anyway, so L'chaim Lori, L'chaim Art. If you're watching, say L'chaim. Join us in celebration, in happiness, in gratitude to Hashem. For 1 second. It's not plugged in. There we go. I got muted for a second. The reason why we're celebrating is Iran Gvili, who was the last of the 251 hostages, plus those that were even in Gaza from before, was finally found today. No thanks to Hamas. Israel found them. They gave information. They gave false information. They gave information that was meant to mislead us. Yeah. 250 bodies to find his body. If you see the videos I posted on Facebook earlier today, there's a few videos. Another one, I didn't want to post too many videos. There's another video that, see a soldier with his hand over his face, and he's crying, he's a grown man. Yes, it's tremendous emotion. Tremendous emotion. Ravit wants to know who's giving me the alcohol. She's not here. Ravit, you see, we're not even here. We're saying l'chaim. Anyway, the point is, I don't want to spend the whole class on this. Maybe I'll write about it, and you're right, because it's in the Torah reading, and the return of Yosef's bones from 200 and something years in captivity also in Egypt. But God promises in today's Torah reading, Hashem will remember you, and Hashem will bring you back home. And if this happened to the Jewish people today on the one level, it will happen to us on an even greater level. God willing, very, very soon, we're all going to leave our captivity and go home to the promised land, B'ezrat Hashem, Karav Mamish, very, very soon. So that was just the pregame. That was just a celebration. It's a happy day. We need to take a moment to recognize and be thankful to Hashem for the miracles that the Jewish people experienced today. And the Baruch Hashem, we don't have to open up the Rafah border without our last hostage and look like, whatever. I'll stop there. Anyway, good evening, Miyakel. I'm glad you're joining us. I hope you'll enjoy the class that's coming up. Good evening, everyone. May the Shama have an elevation. Yes, Art, you are correct. May the Shama of Ran Gvili and every single one of the those that were killed on October 7th and be elevated in Gan Eden. Okay. Tonight's learning is in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef, and the truth is also in the memory of Tova Bas Shmuel, who is Yartzeit is today. In this room that we're learning in is dedicated to her memory. Tyre Klein. So this is a special merit to be learning in a room dedicated to her on the day of her Yartzeit. So let's learn about a man with a hard heart. But first, a joke. Want to hear a joke? About this couple that comes to the marriage counselor. And they say they're having problems in their marriage. So he says, what's the problem? So the woman says, we're having big theological debates, big, religious. So we're having religious problems in their marriage. Religious problems? What's the religious problem? So the wife said, my husband thinks that he's God, and I don't believe in him. She likes it. Okay. He didn't like it so much. Yeah, my husband thinks he's God. No, you got it. My husband thinks he's a God. Sarah would never let her husband think that, so it's not a... Sarah's husband doesn't think he's a God. That's okay, so we're going to talk about a man that thought he was God. Literally, he thought that he was a God. And who am I talking about? Hello, Joe from snow-covered Pennsylvania. Who am I talking about? Who is the man that thought he was a God? Pharaoh. Pharaoh was a man, and this is not some rabbinic interpretation or some medrash somewhere, black and white in the Bible multiple times. I'm going to talk about it in the next few minutes. I'll share some of the stories. Pharaoh was a man that was absolutely convinced that he was a God. He had supernatural powers. He was a God. And 2 years ago, I gave a class on Pharaoh, but this is going to be somewhat similar, but different, with a different angle, because on Shabbos, as I was preparing the Torah reading and I was preparing a sermon, like a light bulb, get like a Chassidus talks about like a lightning bolt of inspiration hit me on Shabbos morning, and it was so powerful, the thought that I'm not going to do the sermon, I'm going to save it for Monday night, because it's really, there's a lot of depth there. And after, when I was thinking about this idea, it's not brilliant, it's so obvious, at least to me. It's also a little dangerous because it maybe takes away from the real message we need to hear. But I was thinking about Pharaoh, and I realized that today, living in the year 2026, to be more specific, living in January of 2026, there is such a relevant, what's what I'm looking for? Similarity, or there's such exactly what the Bible describes of Pharaoh 3,000 years ago, 3,300 years ago, is exactly happening in front of our eyes today. Can anyone think what's happening today that's exactly like Pharaoh? Or who is a person living today that is exactly like Pharaoh? Not Trump. He also, yes, Ayatollah Khomeini. And I'm going to share with you some of the stories of Pharaoh, and it hit me like, wow. A man whose country is being destroyed, who literally everything is falling to pieces, and who is in such absolute denial. You read some of the statements and some of the Twitter posts and public speeches of the Ayatollah Khomeini coming out of Iran. Delusional is an understatement. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time of a holy class quoting a wicked, evil, barbaric, sadistic Russia, Marusha that doesn't deserve our time. But sometimes it's just to realize that the story of Pharaoh, there's a danger. Danger is very often we think of biblical people as characters of a long time ago. Once upon a time, many years ago, there lived a wicked man called Pharaoh. Pharaoh is not a historical relic of the past. As Jews, we need to know that Pharaoh can live today. Pharaoh can live today. And in fact, if you just open your eyes for literally half a second, I mean, some people in America are blind and deaf, and they don't know what happened in Iran. They never heard of it. They don't know Palestine. Iran, as far as I know, is a beautiful place where the birds are chirping. I have no idea. They're oblivious to the fact that 30,000 people may have been killed in the course of just a few days in Iran. They're oblivious. But I'm talking about if you know what's going on in the world. What the Torah describes of Pharaoh is literally the story of the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran today. And so it's important sometimes to make sure that we realize this, because many people study Torah. It's interesting, it's spiritual, it's holy, but it's a work of the past. It's not really something that could happen today. And when you take time to recognize that, no, this story that we read about 3,300 years ago is literally happening now, this week, today. It's happening right now. As we stand, it's happening. Helps you get more excited to learn the Torah. It makes you learn Torah more like, this is the story of my life. Talking about Ram Gvili coming home on the day when the Torah says that the bones of Yosef left Egypt. Torah, this is all of Torah. And so this is something that's an important message. I want to really give you some details and go into a little bit more specifically to see how what happened then is literally happening now. There's also a slight danger, which is that sometimes when you make something about the Ayatollah Khomeini and Pharaoh, so it's easy for someone, a nice, good-meaning, well-hearted, kind, generous person to think, that's Pharaoh, that's Khomeini, it's not me. And really, every single one of us on some much more minor level, we all have a little bit of that Pharaoh. No, Khomeini has it, on steroids. He has it all the way, like Pharaoh. But really, when you study Torah, it's not just to find the historical correlation between two people that share similar extreme tendencies, but really, the objective is to be able to see it in our own lives, and hopefully I'll be able to do that as well. B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so shalom, everyone that's watching from all over the world, especially if you're in nice, cold places. Chaim from, I'm going to call it sunny Florida. It's a little cold, but...
Yeah, a little cold. It's actually waxing hot
compared to other, yeah.
Like I saw this.
I'm going to New York Wednesday morning for Yud Shvat, for the previous Rebbe's yard site. It's going to be single digits there, like Arctic. It's okay.
They showed the thing to me on the news that it was snowing inside the trains. That the snow was.
I saw a video of the Niagara Falls. Also, that was like freezing. The ice was going down. The water was freezing as it was going down. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, anyway, so let's talk, my friends, a little bit about Pharaoh. Now, just to give you some context, Pharaoh was an unbelievable egomaniac who had been given certain powers by God. He was the leader of a very, very powerful army, the most powerful army at the time, not due to anything he did, but because of the fact that God made the land of Egypt wealthy and they had all the wealth from during the years of famine, etc. But he was an egomaniac of epic proportions, extremely narcissistic. And I'm going to talk about what does it mean to be narcissistic. Narcissistic has more than one definition. It's not like it's not like a cookie cutter. Cookies, you can cut them into clean shapes. There's many different strains of narcissism and of this kind of self-centeredness, but we're going to talk about one particular strain tonight. Pharaoh was also an addict, but that was a class 2 years ago. That's a whole different direction. Now we're going to talk about his narcissism, his inability to see anybody else. But some interesting tidbits about Pharaoh. Pharaoh's actually a midget. He's a midget, in case you didn't know that. They say people with short have more of a need to prove their. He was a midget. But he wanted everyone to be lower than him and to bow down to him. So he created the doors of his palace, 1 amma, 1 cubit high, which was exactly his height. He was 1 cubit high. But any regular-sized human being, the only way they can get into his chambers was on their hands and knees. You had to crawl to get through the doorway of his room. So when you entered his chamber, you already entered in a submissive position on your hands and knees, which he didn't have to do because he was a midget. He already forced everyone to be subservient and humbled before him. That's why you come to class, learn things you don't know. Yeah. The doors. Listen, if you know everything, then you wouldn't be interested in learning. We all know learning. So he forced everyone to bow down before him. He had 60,000 guards around his palace. 60,000 guards. So the first time that Moshe and Aaron were sent by God to go and meet Pharaoh in the palace, you know how they got in? Magically. Either Malach Gabriel put them through the roof, or they magically walked through the walls and didn't bow down. And they didn't go through any guards. And Pharaoh is sitting there in his throne, and all of a sudden, unannounced, shows up Moshe and Aaron, not on their hands and knees, not subservient, not humbled, standing before him. He gets very angry, and he says to these men, he calls the guards, who let them in? And all the guards saying, oh, not me. I didn't do it. No one had seen them enter the palace. They couldn't just walk in. It's like a slight question. People don't really pay attention. That's how the story goes. Moshe and Aaron came to Pharaoh. But how did they get that appointment? They didn't. They literally just walked through the walls of the palace and magically arrived in the presence of Pharaoh. So Pharaoh says, yeah, what do you want? And by the way, one Medrash says, or Gemara says, I remember, that it was the birthday of Pharaoh. If I'm not mistaken, it was actually the day that Moshe and Aaron first appeared before Pharaoh was his birthday. So on that day, everyone was coming to bring Pharaoh his gifts. And what did Moshe and Aaron come with? Nothing. With a demand that my people go. He was very angry. He kicks them out, says, come back to me tomorrow. While they're gone, he starts to do some homework on these people. Who are they? Who's their God? Who's their people? And he thinks they're magicians that walk through the walls, etc. So the next day, when they came, he had his magicians waiting for them, including his head magician, who was his number one top magician, a man we talked about not last week, but 2 weeks ago, Bilam. Bilam was there, and Bilam was waiting for him to show that the magic he would do, they could do also. When he comes back, so in that time, Pharaoh had a book of all the gods. He had a book. And he started to research, who is this God of the Jewish people? And he went through all the gods. He didn't find the Jewish God. Sometimes he found the Jewish God, he didn't find Havaya, there's Elohim, there's Havaya, there's a God of nature, the God that transcends nature. And so here we have the first moment when we begin to discover not just the wickedness of Pharaoh, but the inability of Pharaoh to hear anything besides for himself. And this is going to be the theme that I want to reiterate again and again tonight. So remember it already now, because you're going to hear this again. Pharaoh is unable to see or to hear or comprehend anything that didn't fit with his own personal benefits, his own personal agenda, what he wanted. That's what he heard. What he didn't want, he couldn't comprehend it. He couldn't comprehend it. So let's see exactly what does he say. This is going back now 2 weeks ago when Moshe first appeared before Pharaoh. Chapter 5 in the book of Exodus, verse number 2. After Moshe said, let my people go free, Pharaoh replied, who is the Lord that I should obey and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go. Okay? So this is, I don't know the Lord. I'm not going to let him go. And then after Moshe and Aaron demand that they should let the people go free and say, let us go to worship our God in the desert, he responds, but the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you distract the people from their tasks? Go to your labors. And Pharaoh continued, the people of the land are already so numerous, and you would have them cease from their labors. Meaning, what is Pharaoh saying over here? Is he saying, I don't know? Or what he's really saying is, all that exists is in me. I don't want to know. I don't care about what you're saying. All I care about is me. Really, really, what Pharaoh is saying over here is your God is not me. And I don't want to know such a God. All I care about is myself. And that's why, what does Pharaoh say? You're taking the Jews away from the labor. Like, Pharaoh becomes almost the victim over here. You understand what Pharaoh is doing? Like, Pharaoh is victimizing himself and saying, you're disturbing my workforce. You're disturbing my, the Jews are a lot of Jews. We need to have them work. Why are you distracting us? And so this is really our introduction to Pharaoh, a man who's ignoring reality. He's ignoring reality, and that's what it is. I'm not willing to accept anything that is beyond myself. Okay?
Is he also building them and telling them, get to your labors? You guys are supposed to be working too.
Correct. Well, so their labor was to go study Torah. They were the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi didn't work the way the other slaves, the other Jewish people worked. But the point is that he's an eye. I don't know. I will not send the Jews to go free. I'm going to tell you who he is. It's not that he didn't know. He didn't know. He could know. I don't want to know. I'm not able to know something that doesn't fit where I am the God, where I am in charge, where I'm everything. So what does God tell Moses to do? God says to Moses, go to Pharaoh early in the morning. Remember this? And then you're going to go to Pharaoh and say to him, if you don't let the Jews go free, the plague of blood. Why did he send him early in the morning? I didn't bother bringing all the text because I don't want to go through the whole story in detail. I want to save the time for the ending, which is the most powerful. Why does he send Moses to Pharaoh early in the morning? Anyone knows? Pharaoh claimed to be a god. Yeah, anyone remembers, if you're watching online, you can chat. Good evening, Mario. Good evening, Shira. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, David and Kobe. Pharaoh said, I am a Lord. Now, do gods need to go to the bathroom? No. Going to the restroom is a human need. Humans need the bathroom. Gods don't need the bathroom. So Pharaoh controlled himself all day to not go to the bathroom. And that was part of the illusion he created that he was not human. He was a demigod.
He was lying to himself.
Well, he was lying to himself, lying to everyone else. And every morning he had his private time where he would speak to the gods, so to say, and meditate in the Nile. And really, what was he doing? Urinating and relieving himself, which is amazing. Because the Nile was the source of sustenance for the entire Egyptian economy. Egypt only survived because the waters of the Nile irrigated the land. Egypt has no rainfall. If not for the Nile River, Egypt would have no food. And yet, when you reach a certain level of self-obsession and of narcissism, you know what happens? The very hand that feeds you becomes your enemy, and you go and you say it, I don't want to say it nicely, you crap on it. It becomes here to serve you. And therefore, Pharaoh is going to this Nile, which is the source of his economy, the source of his income, the source of his existence, the source of his greatness. And what does he use it for? As his own personal toilet. It's an amazing level of self-centeredness, where all you can see is yourself. Okay, so this is giving us more of an idea of Pharaoh. And one by one, Moshe begins to do the 10 plagues to Pharaoh, bringing him the blood and the frogs. And you all know the story. And I don't want to spend time on it, even though each one of these plagues is part of the message of God to Pharaoh. You're not a God, you're not so great. But let's leave it alone for now. Until comes along the plague of the locusts. And by this time, the entire land of Egypt is devoured. It's destroyed. There is nothing left. The animals have died in pestilence. The fields are destroyed in the hail. The wild animals have come. The frogs are... It's terrible. At that time, what happens? The servants of Pharaoh say to Pharaoh, what do they say to him? Let's go look at the text. 1 second, I open it up. If you're watching on my screen, I just close it. 1 second. They come to Pharaoh and they say to him, here we go, chapter 10, verse 7. And the Pharaoh servant said to him, how long will this one be a stumbling block to us? Let the people go, and they will worship their gods. Don't you yet know that Egypt is lost? Don't you see the destruction of your land? Can't you see that it's all destroyed? It's destroyed. There's nothing left. Save yourself now while you still can. Now, does Pharaoh listen? You tell me, does Pharaoh listen? No. He's not able to. It's obvious to everyone that has a quarter of a brain that Egypt is being destroyed, except for Pharaoh. Pharaoh is unable to see that Egypt is being lost. You know why? Because when you reach this level of self-centeredness and self-conviction and self-righteousness, it's easier to say reality is not happening than it is to say I was wrong. I'll repeat that because that's a very important statement. It reaches a level where someone becomes so self-obsessed and so self-righteous and so self-justified and so, into their own greatness that it's easier to deny reality than it is to accept that you made a mistake. This is what's happening to Pharaoh. Pharaoh is unable to acknowledge that keeping the Jews as slaves is destroying the land. And if he would let them go, he would still have a land. But he's unable to let them go. He's unable to recognize that this God of the Jewish people is actually a God that doesn't fit to my reality, so to say. And to Pharaoh, it's not just about the slaves. It's about proving who's right. To Pharaoh, he'd rather keep the Jews as slaves and not have to admit that God is the God, even if that means his land is destroyed and he's miserable in darkness and in hail and in locusts, etc., than to admit he made a mistake. So we see this, first of all, on the macro level in Iran. I mean, what's happening in Iran? Do you know, I read this week that they're now printing, the Bank of Iran, the Central Bank of Iran, whatever it is printing quadrillion reals. Quadrillion. That's what I read. The real is so devalued, and the banks need money to prop it up. They're printing a quadrillion real notes. Now, what does a quadrillion real notes do to the value of a real? It diminishes them by a quadrillion percent. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no economy. That's how this whole protest started. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. I remember that I went to Zimbabwe when I was a yeshiva student. I was in South Africa for the year. It used to be called Rhodesia, which was a very, very wealthy country. Rhodesia, for those who remember, was an extremely wealthy country with a tremendous amount of natural resources and minerals and iron, etc. And then the blacks rioted against the white landowners. The country was like 1% white and 99% black, something like that. I might have my numbers a little off. But the whites owned the farm, and they rioted. They killed most of the whites living in the land, including many Jews that were living there. But it wasn't anti-Semitic per se. It was against whites, not against Jews. And Robert Mugabe, who became the dictator of the land of Rhodesia, now we call Zimbabwe, destroyed the land to the extent that I actually have, it's in my drawer actually, I could have bought it. There wasn't a $10,000 Zimbabwe dollar, and the paper was so cheap they only printed one side of the paper. So they didn't even bother printing the other side of the dollar bill. After class, I might have it here in my office. I may. It's my home, or it might be here. You understand? The country became so devalued, the economy became so failed, and Mugabe was the same thing. Robert Mugabe, these dictators are unable to see the destruction they're bringing upon their people, which is really destruction upon themselves, and their country is falling apart. And instead of making reforms, instead of saying, okay, I made a mistake, instead, they continue talking about destroying Israel, destroying America, and the delusion coming out of Iran, declaring victory after the 12-day war, where they were literally a quarter. If you read what happened in Iran, for those that don't know, and maybe I should explain, because people don't, not everyone reads as much as I do, and knows, or Sarah does, and knows the details. What Israel did to Iran, forget in 12 days, in the first 12 minutes, in the first hour of the war, was beyond Israel's own wildest dreams of success. Israel, first of all, I'm getting distracted, but it's a good distraction. Israel created somehow they hacked into their communication systems and convinced all of the leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards there was an urgent secret meeting in the underground bunker. And all of the leadership, all of the generals, all the people that could give an order to attack back were all inside the same bunker that was blown up and bombed 1 second or 1 minute before the attack on Iran began. That was like the opening attack. They killed every single one of the commanders. There was no one there to give the response. Iran had, I think, 10,000 launchers ready to go, or something like that. Israel was expecting 100,000, up to 100,000 missiles to come at them from Iran. They have hundreds of thousands of missiles. Hundreds of thousands Iran has. They have, I think, 10,000 launchers, because missiles are only having million missiles don't help you. It's about launching them. They're like 10,000 launches. Again, I've made my numbers maybe a little bit off, but this is the general. They're not too far off. And Israel destroyed 25% of them within the first hour. In the first hour, they destroyed all of the air defenses in Tehran. They had from the Mossad for years and years and years. They've been bringing in, smuggling in trucks and this and that, sleeper cells. They brought in drones and brought in different equipment over the course of years. And they were all activated. And at the exact same time, every single cell successfully managed whatever base and whatever air defense systems. They launched their drones from out of trucks and out of wherever that came and blew up their air defense systems. Within 1 hour, there was no air defense in Tehran. And Israel was flying over like the sky was free. Israel was flying. They were refueling over Iran just to make a statement. They were refueling over the air in Iran just to prove we have absolute superiority over here. No one can tell us anything. You have to understand, Israel's worst case scenario was 100,000 missiles and 14,000 Israelis dead. That was the worst case scenario. Iran didn't shoot a single missile until 20 hours after the war started. They had 10,000 ready to go. But they didn't take off because there was no one to give the command. And then Israel was bombing them. Took 20 hours for the first 150 to go. And in the end, they sent three waves. Instead of thousands at a time, 150 at a time, which is very easy to intercept, etc. Understand? So you would think a normal person, after such an embarrassing defeat, where everyone is destroyed, you get your like, you know the expression, like handed to you in your face. We try and change. And you see the protests happening in your country. There's no food. There's no water. There's a drought. Iran has no water. They have no money. They have no nothing. And instead, what does he keep on doing? Still threatening Trump and like big talking and celebrating the victory over Israel and just warning this was restraint what we did in the 12-day war. Just wait till we do unleash our full arsenal. But he really believes it. I believe, and again, I haven't spoken to Khomeini to verify my belief, but it's my personal opinion that he himself actually believes it. Just like, you know who else believed it? Hitler. They say that Hitler in the last days, in the last weeks of the war, he was in his bunker. The generals knew the war was over. It was lost. His armies were being destroyed. And Hitler was moving imaginary armies that no longer existed. He's telling armies like to go fight in places that army doesn't exist anymore. Führer, it's destroyed. He was moving these armies. He was planning battles with armies that didn't exist. He was in denial. When he eventually realized he couldn't handle it, he committed suicide. He couldn't handle it. So, in my non-humble opinion, the Ayatollah is convinced that his country is the greatest, and he has the ability to destroy Iran, destroy Israel, destroy America. How could you be so stupid? How could you be so oblivious to what is seemingly so obvious? I'm sure he has the data. I'm sure he knows how many of his generals were killed in the 12-day war. I'm sure he knows what the real is worth and how there's no water in Tehran. I'm sure he knows that. But he's unable to process that information in a way that will have any impact on his behavior. He's unable to do it. He's become so self-obsessed, so convinced of his greatness, so convinced that he's a god, just like Pharaoh, who is convinced he's a god. Ayatollah is a supreme, leader, whatever the religious system is, or whatever his official religious god level, like whatever he calls himself. And he's unable to accept a reality that is different than what he's convinced himself of. So on one hand, it's like you read about Paro, and you read the verse we just read a second ago where they're saying to him, Pharaoh, our country's being destroyed. Give concessions. Let the Jews go and you'll remain the king. You'll keep your country. And he can't do it. And you read the news, and Ayatollah is the same thing. Make concessions. If I was Ayatollah and I was a little bit smart, I would come out and I would publicly apologize and say, we're going to do reforms. We're going to, fix the water. We're going to, give out free food. Do something. You have the army and you keep your country. He's not keeping it much longer. I haven't spoken to Trump either. Neither of them I've spoken to recently. But I believe there's going to be an attack sometime in the near future. Again, I don't know. I'm not an expert. What? That's what I believe. That's the indications coming out with the warships. Again, we don't know. Me and you don't know. I don't know if anyone really knows. But the point is, he's unable to recognize. It's easier for him to deny reality than it is for him to say, maybe I should change course. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I was too egomaniac. Maybe I should let the Jews go for a few days to go pray to their God. So on one hand, you see it happening where the king of he's not a stupid person. He became the king. He's not a stupid person, probably, but he became so full of himself, so in his own brain, and so in his own self-centeredness, he's unable to process reality. Every one of us, on some level, has a para. You know what para really means? Para, we know that names are very reflective of reality. The Hebrew name, we had a class on this a few weeks back, right? Your Hebrew name reflects what you are. So the Hebrew letters of the word paro, Pei, Reish, Ayin, Hey, are the same letters of the word ha'oref, which means the nape of your neck, the back of your neck. The back of your neck. Oref is the back. We are called, the God sometimes calls Jewish people an am kshe'oref, a hard, stiff-necked people. So Paro is not stiff-necked, he's hard-hearted. You know why he's a hard heart? Oref. Paro is from the word oref, the back of the neck. Back of the neck, you can't change it. You can't talk. It's like talking to the neck, right? Talking to the back of someone's head. It's talking to the wall. It's a stubbornness. It's a stubbornness that I'm unwilling to change. You say a joke, but this guy said, someone said to him, you're being very stubborn. He said, I'm telling you I'm not stubborn. He says, yeah, that's what a stubborn person would say, right? Power is a stubbornness where I can't admit I'm wrong. And maybe, perhaps, all of us, myself included, I'm not embarrassed. I mean, I'm embarrassed, but you're all in the same category as me. So we're all struggling in this together. So there's no shame per se in acknowledging that we all have moments where we deny reality instead of admitting our mistakes. Correct. And it's easier to fool ourselves than to admit we need to change direction. And then we dig in deeper and deeper. And the more we fool ourselves, the more fooled we become. Sounds quite simple. It's actually a very profound statement, actually. The more we fool ourselves, the more fooled we become until we're so fooled that we think the other person is lying to us. Like if you watch the videos of these like protesters in college campuses and they're asking them, I saw a video of this college, he's Queers for Palestine. I'm really political tonight, but it's okay. Queers for Palestine. Queers, and he's like, yeah. So the guy's asking him, do you think there's queers in Palestine? He's like, sure, of course, there's queers. So, and they would love you. If you went to Palestine, they would probably hug you and kiss you. He says, of course they would. Propaganda. So the guy said, I heard that actually being homo, being gay is illegal in Palestine. They would throw you in Gaza over the roof. Said, no, that's propaganda. That's propaganda. But the guy's nuts. Because if you honestly think that Queers for Palestine is intellectually smart, I mean, I should probably stop now. But it's basic common knowledge. Do a basic Google search, and you're going to discover that they kill gay people in Gaza. That's what they do to them. They throw them off the buildings and throw stones on top of them. That is the religious way of dealing with gay people. This is not like some religious, propaganda. This is simple facts. But this guy with his Queers for Palestine shirt, he's so self-confident in his unbelievably delusional worldview that it's easier for him to continue being delusional than it is for him to acknowledge that maybe I should rethink my values and my worldview. But he's just an extreme example where it's very easily verifiable that gays don't live, at least not freely, in Gaza. If they are gays in Gaza, they're hiding, their identity.
They're hiding or buried.
Yeah. hiding or under the rock, yeah. Either under a rock or they were put under, the rock was thrown on them. But we all, to some extent, have this problem. There's an element of Pharaoh inside all of us who we say, who is this God? I don't know this God. No, we know God. Of course we know God. We don't say God is, we don't say Baruch Hashem, we don't come to Shul, we don't pray on Yom Kippur, we don't say God is in charge of the world, and God will decide how much money I make and how much money I'll have this. Of course we say it, right? And then when something happens, we dig down into our own previous conception, and we can't admit that we made a mistake. And it's easier to keep on fooling ourselves than to change course. Reminded of a story with the Rebbe, I think the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, that told someone that the only one you're fooling, is yourself. And he said to him, he said in Yiddish, "Uns is nicht kein Kunst zu abnar and nar," which in English means it's not a trick to fool a fool. Okay, you fooled yourself. Hippopotamus, you're a fool. So to fool a fool is not so hard. You understand? Okay. So I want to continue on this theme of being so self-obsessed, so self-centered, that we're unable to see anyone else or anything else, that we don't see the destruction of our land. The Ayatollah can't see Iran literally being destroyed as a country. Doesn't see his rule falling apart. Pharaoh can't see his rule falling apart, even when his advisors tell him, Pharaoh, you know. And we do the same thing. And our spouse tells us, our friends tell us, our rabbi tells us, our mother tells us, but we can't hear it. It's not that we hear, we choose, we don't hear. We're not able to comprehend it. Why? Because we're so self-obsessed. So this introduces us to really what got my brain thinking on Shabbos morning, to the plague of darkness. What's the plague of darkness? So the Torah describes the plague. Before I go to the plague of darkness, what I'm describing has a Kabbalistic term for it, by the way, called Timtum Halev. Timtum Halev is the stuffness of the heart, where you can hear something and be told something, but your heart is unable to acknowledge what you're being told. Correct. It's a like in medicine, you have a kid, well, then you have like labels, right? We have a diagnosis. Oh, he's ADL, LMLP, QRS, TV, whatever. We have diagnoses, whether it's good or not to diagnose everything and everyone, whatever. It's not for right now. It's a diagnosis. So in Kabbalah and Chassidus is the diagnosis. The person that rather fool himself or is unable to hear truth and unable to hear reality, and instead is in denial because of his own ego, his own pride, his own Paro-like hard-hearted syndrome. In Kabbalistic diagnosis, if you go to the rabbi for a prescription, the diagnosis will be Timtum Halev. Timtum Halev HaMoach. Timtum Halev HaMoach means a stuffing of the heart and the brain. The brain is stuffed. Your brain is stuffed. You can't, nothing goes in. Okay. I'm going to go back to that if I have time. If we get to it, I'm going to go back to it. So now let's go to the plague of darkness. The plague of darkness, we see something very interesting. God is describing what happened in the plague of darkness. So the Torah says, before that. So I have another text here. And that's why in this week's Torah reading, before the plague of darkness, what happens in this week's Torah reading? Even after Pharaoh has no choice and he lets the Jewish people go free, because he wants to save his life. What happens when he hears that the Jewish people are wandering in the desert? What happens to Pharaoh? He goes after them. And it was told this week's Torah reading, we read chapter 14, and was told to the king of Egypt. And the people had fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this? That we let Israel go from serving us. Meaning, the fact that yesterday my life was in danger and I realized I have no choice. The moment, sometimes people accept it. You know how many times I've sat with someone, counseled someone, dealing with whatever it is, and they accept, Rabbi, you're right. I'm going to change. I hit rock bottom. My wife wants to divorce me. I need to be a better husband. I need to be whatever. Okay. And then what happens 3 days later? The moment the pressure is off, The moment the threat of divorce is off the table again, she's not walking out on you or whatever it is. It takes a few days. And then Pharaoh kicks back in. So when the plague of the firstborn is happening, and your wife tells you, I'm walking out on you, okay, fine, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to do whatever. And they realize, and I've talked to people like this, that moment of desperation when they come and they're desperate. That's why they come to me, when they're desperate. And then they get it. Yeah, 100%. And you think, well, this is great. They've changed. It's going to be all good. They recognize the truth. They recognize what they need to do to make their lives better. And a week later, what's going on? Oh, boy. My wife made a comment. Something happened. And like the cat was, saw the mouse, and the cat forgets being a well-trained whatever. The cat goes running after the mouse. And all the previous habits and previous self-justifications and previous whatever it is that the person was carrying before, they restuffed the brain. And that's what happened to Pharaoh. Pharaoh hears the Jewish people are wandering in the desert. Last week your life was in danger. You thought that Pharaoh was the firstborn. Pharaoh thought he was going to die. So he said, okay, guys, please. He's like running. Pharaoh's running after Moshe and Aaron in the middle of the night saying, please, please go out of Egypt. And Moshe says, I'm not leaving him in the night like a thief. We're going to wait till the morning. And he's begging them, go, go, go. In fact, the opening word of this week's Torah reading is B'shalach parei esam, which literally means when he sent with him, like to go out of Egypt. Not just said, you can go. He literally chased them out. He was like leading them out of Egypt. Go, 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 quicker, quicker. That's why the masters have time to rise. We were being forced. We were being pressured to leave quickly.
I think there's a midrash that says that Moses slapped Pharaoh on the face to embarrass him so he wouldn't die.
Okay, because he didn't die. Pharaoh didn't die.
Yes, Moshe slapped him in the face and embarrassed
Well,
him.
God didn't let him die because God needed to keep him for Nineveh. God wanted him to still see the destruction of the army at the Red Sea. He wasn't done with Pharaoh just yet.
Yeah, because when he got slapped, he got embarrassed.
Okay.
It's like when you're embarrassed, it's like you were dead.
Yes. Okay, good. So the point is, now that Pharaoh hears that the Jewish people are lost in the desert, whatever he learned last week, out the window. And all of a sudden, what happens to the heart of Pharaoh? It becomes hard again. And he prepared his chariot. He himself. He's not saying to his servant, go make my chariot, go get my horses ready. He was so desperate to go get back to the Jewish people, he himself went to go do it. And he took his people with him, 600 chosen chariots. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with a high hand. Biyad Rama. Pharaoh's heart becomes hard again. Meaning this Timtum Halev V'Hamoyach syndrome. This stuffed heart and stuffed brain syndrome that we have is not easily cured. It's not like a one-time shot and that's it and it goes away. It gets stuffed again, right? We have a lot of, someone has stuffed arteries. Yeah, it's not like you do one shot, you take blood pressure medication for a day and you're all healed. You get to clear out the arteries unless they put a stent, it's work. Okay. So Pharaoh's chasing after the Jewish people. Why? Because it came back. This Timtum Halev, this stuffed mind, this hard heart syndrome came back. And so here's a beautiful, beautiful teaching where you see this regarding the plague of darkness. The plague of darkness, when the Torah is describing what happened, it says the Torah, chapter 10, verse 23, no man could see his brother, nor could anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But for all the children of Israel, there was light in their dwellings. You couldn't move. So the Torah says two things. I'm going to ask you a question. Read the verse. First, it says no one could see his brother. And then it says that the darkness was so dark, they couldn't even move. They couldn't stand up. They couldn't sit down. What's the first part of the verse saying? Normal darkness. What's normal darkness? That you can't see. Right? What happens normally in the dark? Not in the plague of darkness, in regular dark. You can't see your brother. That's what happens any day, and any night when it gets dark. We live with electricity and with street lights, but if you ever go somewhere where there's no light and it gets dark outside, you can't see. That's exactly what darkness is. So when the Torah describes to you the darkness of the plague of darkness, it says it was a darkness that no man could see his brother. Yeah, that's what normally happens. Oh. So Rashi explained that there was 2 stages of darkness. The first 3 days was a regular darkness, which is regular, where you can't see the person, 5 feet from you. And then came in the next 3 days a more severe form of darkness, which is the darkness that no man could stand. The darkness became tangible. Normally, darkness is not tangible. I can't see you, but I can move. I can feel you. I can touch you. In the second stage of the 3 days of the 6 days of darkness became so dark that they couldn't even move. So that's how Rashi explains the redundancy of telling us that there was a darkness where they couldn't see, and then there was a darkness where they couldn't move, to tell you that there was a regular darkness and then a deeper, more severe form of darkness. But on a simple level, without getting into these 2 stages of darkness, why would the Torah feel the need to repeat to you the fact that when it got dark, it was so dark they couldn't see someone else? That's normal darkness.
Actually, not someone else,
The
their brother.
brother, even more, okay.
And I think it's because they couldn't see their brother, meaning the other Egyptians, because
Exactly.
the Jewish people could see, and they actually went inside of the places and ransacked the.
So there's a beautiful Hasidic teaching from one of the Rebbes, not Chabad, I think the Ger Rebbe, that as follows. You're already getting it because I've already been leading up to this for the last 45 minutes, which is that when the Torah is describing the darkness of Egypt, it's explaining to you what became of the culture of Egypt. It's explaining to you how symptomatic the self-centeredness of Pharaoh had become, that all of Egypt became so self-centered, so self-absorbed, so narcissistic, that they couldn't see their brother. Not that physically, because it was dark, they couldn't see the darkness. They became self-absorbed. And when you're self-absorbed, someone can be, you ever spoken to someone who's self-absorbed, and like someone will be 2 feet away from them, they don't see them. They don't see them. Why? Because you're not important to me. You don't have any importance whatsoever in my existence. So I literally it's not that I ignored you or I made a choice not to see you. By default, I don't see you because you're not important to me. You mean nothing to me. I'm not just saying you're not important. You mean nothing. It's like, do you see a mosquito flying in a dust particle? It's nothing to me. That's how the Egyptian culture become because of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the role model, who was a leader, who brought this down to the culture of the people. And this became the style of the Egyptian culture. That they were so self-centered, they could not see their brother. And therefore, the Torah says they couldn't move from their place. You know, when you become stuck in denial and you're unable to change and you're unable to accept and recognize the truth and you're unable to become a better person, you know when that happens? When you become so self-absorbed that you can't see your brother. The two parts of the verse, describing the darkness where they couldn't see their brother, and then describing the darkness where they couldn't get up from their place, it's not just describing 2 phases of darkness, it's explaining the cause and the effect of the Egyptian stubbornness, of their being stuck in fighting the Jews even to their own detriment and their own destruction. They couldn't see their brother because they were so selfish, so self-centered, so self-righteous, so self-justified, I'm right no matter what, I'm right, and this person's wrong, and she's wrong, and he's wrong, whatever, and I'm right. That's Pharaoh. I'm convinced I'm right, and I was victimized, and everyone that's against whatever it is. And then because we become so self-absorbed, we don't see the other person's perspective. We can't see their reality. We can't see our brother, not a stranger. This is my best friend. This is my brother, someone I love, I know, I lived with. But now I become so self-absorbed, I don't see them. I don't understand their perspective. I don't understand their life. I don't understand their reality. All I see is me and nothing but me. When you reach that point of self-centeredness, like Pharaoh, where he can't see anything but his own godlike convictions of his own greatness, that's what leads to a place where a person is unable to get up from where they are. They're stuck in their misery. They're stuck in their quicksand. But they don't think they're miserable because they think that they're right. So if I'm right, I'm not miserable. I'm right. I'm living in my own self version of reality. This is what happened to the Jewish people. Sorry, to the Egyptian people. However, continue reading the verse. This beautiful Hasidic teaching is describing not just the darkness, not the spiritual, emotional darkness of the Egyptians. What does the very next words of the verse say? No man could see his brother, nor could anyone rise from his place for 3 days. L'chol b'nei Yisrael, you see it, verse 10, chapter 10, verse 23. L'chol b'nei Yisrael haya or b'mishreisam. But for the children of Israel, there was light in their dwellings. The Jews had light. What does it mean the Jews had light? They could see somebody else. They were able to get out of their own self-absorption, out of their own narcissistic belief that I'm a God, which means in our language, I'm right, and whatever I do is right, and anyone who does anything against me is evil and should be destroyed the way the Jews should be destroyed, etc. You know, in Jewish law, there's a halacha. In the morning, what time can you put on tzitzis in the morning? The tzitzis in the morning is from the time, if you know in Jewish law, it's not from dawn, because dawn is still dark. But it's earlier than sunrise. It's from a time called Mishayakir. Mishayakir is when you can recognize someone you know from a distance of 4 feet away. Not your brother, not someone you know very well, because then you can recognize even in the distance, you know their silhouette. When I recognize you from a distance, then the time that you can already put on. The light is enough to see someone in the distance. That's considered light. That you can already put on your talis and your tzitzis and put on tefillin. For a Jew, the definition of light means being able to see beyond yourself and see somebody else. The Egyptian self-centeredness was, all I see is myself. Pharaoh said, I'm a god, all I see is me. And therefore the whole country could be falling apart and being destroyed, and he's oblivious. All he can see is himself. But for the Jewish people, there was light. The Jewish people were able to see somebody else. It's beautiful, huh? Can you relate to this? So what's the solution? What's the solution? We have 1 minute left. We'll go more than a minute. So even I want to dwell on this a little bit more. But the Tanya talks about this diagnosis of the person with a stuffed heart, a stuffed brain, who's unable to see anything besides for himself, says the Tanya. I'm quoting from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says, chapter 29, occasionally and even frequently, these people will experience a dullness of the heart. Timtum alev, which is stuffedness. It's dull, it's stuffed, as though it had turned to stone. They can't open their heart. They can't pray. They can't see anything besides themselves. So in this case, advice given in the Holy Zohar is a wooden beam which does not catch fire should be splintered. You have a big log, right? It won't catch fire. What should you do to the log? Chop it into pieces, then it will catch fire. Similarly, a body to which the light of the soul does not penetrate should be crushed. And thereby the body becomes receptive to the soul's light. In simple English, what this means is that when a person becomes so self-absorbed that all they see is themselves, you know what you need to do? Break it a little bit. Force the person out of the comfort zone. Force them out of their own creature comforts. Force them to have to help somebody else. Force them to have to care for somebody else. And that will help them grow. I had another story. I was reminded of a story this moment of a young woman that came to the Rebbe. This was in a living Torah a while ago. It's a powerful story. She was a young woman, young girl, a lady. She had gotten engaged to a Chabad guy. And they went to have a yechidus, a meeting with the Rebbe before their wedding. And it ended up being that Normally, the Chabad custom is you don't see each other from a week before the wedding. Right? That's normally the custom. The week before, you don't see the bride and groom. However, to get a meeting with the Rebbe was difficult, the timing, etc. It didn't work out. So it ended up being that their meeting was the night of the 7 days. The week begins. So they both came to the meeting with a shomer. They went into the meeting together. And then from then, they were going to see each other till the wedding. They come into the room for the blessing before their wedding, which was typical. And all of a sudden, they each have a letter. The girl starts to cry. Starts to cry. So the Rebbe said, what's the matter? So she says, I want to tell you only in private, not with my husband. I wanted to go out of the room. So this young man, I don't remember his name now, is standing in the Rebbe's room. And the Rebbe gives him a look. Like she's crying. The bride is crying. And she asks him to go out of the room. So the Rebbe didn't know what to do, so to say. So he looks at the man like, what do you want to do? So he had no idea. He had no idea that his wife wanted to say something in private to the Rebbe. But the Rebbe was giving him a look, so he walked out of the Rebbe's room. And his fiancée, his bride-to-be, spent quite a few minutes alone with the Rebbe. And she came out. And his shomer, the guy, whoever was watching him, was taking him, wherever he was going. She was going wherever they were going. They weren't being alone in private anymore. It was already the week of their wedding. And so he didn't have a chance to speak to her and find out what happened in the Rebbe's room. She didn't say anything to him. Comes the wedding. They go to the wedding. They stand on the chuppah, the whole chuppah, the blessings, the ring, everything. And after the chuppah, what happens in a religious wedding? The bride and the groom go into a yichud room. They go into a room alone. Just the two of them. They lock the door, nobody else there. They go into the yichud room. And the first thing out of his mouth is, what did you talk to the Rebbe about in the room privately for 10 minutes? He was going crazy for a week. He got kicked out of the Rebbe's office for his wife to have a conversation. So I don't remember if she told him then, or I'll tell you tonight when we go home. I don't remember. But she said to him basically that I told the Rebbe I want to call off the wedding. I want to call off the wedding. Why? Because I'm a very selfish person. That's what she said to the Rebbe. I'm a mean and selfish person, and I'm not a nice person to be with. And my fiance is a wonderful guy, a nice guy, and I feel bad for him. Now he thinks I'm a very nice person, because sure, we went on a few dates, and I'm very charming and very nice, and we had a beautiful time, and so it was a charming, we had a nice dating experience. We were going to get married, and 2 months from now, I was going to discover that I'm actually an angry, selfish person. I have no patience. I get angry. I have a very, very short temper. I get angry very, very quickly. And why should he suffer being married to a miserable woman for the rest of his life? This is what she said to the Rebbe. She doesn't know what to do. She feels bad. She's making this man get married. She feels about to call off the wedding, but to make him marry me, it's not fair.
So what did Rebbe say?
What did Rebbe say to her? It's a good question. No. The Rebbe told her that she should work on becoming more patient. How? By taking a job working with sick children. She should go work with children, not just any children, specifically special needs children or sick children who require a tremendous amount of patience and love because they spill and they drop things and they make in their pants. You know what I'm saying? They're not well. They're sick. I don't know if it was special needs or it was sick children in a hospital. I think it was sick children in a hospital. And when you're working with sick patients, you need to have a lot of patience for your patients, a lot of love to nurture them and take care of them. The Rebbe said to her that by working in an environment that forces you to learn how to be patient and sensitive to the needs of others will help you become a more patient, loving person. Is that a beautiful story? Beautiful story. And the wisdom of the Rebbe to help save the marriage and to give her wisdom and advice, practical advice, how she could change herself. And so I had a different story, but this story is actually a very good story. It's a very, very important message for us. We can look at the story of Pharaoh in the Bible, or we can look at the story of the Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran today and say, Meshuggah, you're crazy. Don't you see you're destroying your country? How could you not see what's happening that everyone can see? Or we could be a little bit more reflective and a little bit more self-aware and a little bit more spiritually mature and look in the mirror and say, maybe I also have made some bad choices only because I can't see somebody else. Not because I'm stupid, not because I'm an idiot, but because I'm too selfish. I'm too self-obsessed. I'm too narcissistic in my own reality. And I can't allow myself to acknowledge I made a mistake and I chose the wrong path. And so instead of acknowledging it, I keep on digging myself in deeper and deeper. And the deeper you dig, the deeper you're dug. And the more you fool yourself, the more you're fooled. And to realize that perhaps we become too self-obsessed in our own self-righteousness. And the solution, how do we get out of that? Force ourselves to be more aware of others. And the more we spend time not thinking about ourselves, but thinking about how I can be aware of the needs of others, is the more that we can break the hard-hearted evil of the Timtum Alev, this hard-hearted syndrome of the Pharaoh of old and the Ayatollah of today, and to find the ability to have an open heart, not a hard heart, but an open heart, to be able to accept and to love truly and to live a happy, loving life. God willing. B'ezrat Hashem. Next week will be a very, very beautiful program here in Shul with Lieutenant Colonel Yaron Buskila. You're welcome to join us. I will stream it on Facebook. For those that are watching on Facebook, for those that won't be here, I will stream it. Join us in person. We'll have wine and cheese and fruits and a very, very, like a whole Tu B'Shvat experience. It will be a very, very beautiful experience, and I look forward to a wonderful evening, B'ezrat Hashem. And it will be on Facebook as well, so you can watch it. B'ezrat Hashem. But that will just be the lecture part. Okay, my friends. Many questions. The flyer. I don't know the whole discussion. Whole discussion about it. Thank you, Jessica. I'm glad you enjoyed. Yes, Alex, making ourselves more bittul. That's exactly right. Is there a flyer here? 1 second. Yeah. The flyers are in the lobby. But if you're going to join us next Monday in person, that'll be amazing. If not, we'll see you on Facebook. Yes, Jessica, the best cure is to service others. 100%. Yeah, what do you want to say, David? I don't know. There's a lot of discussion about that. I know it's a whole what? A lot of questions. It's a lot of different opinions. Which if it was Pharaoh Ramses, because even Ramses, there's different Ramses. The third, the fourth, the fifth, it's like a whole. Yeah. I don't. A second. Thank you, Shir. I'm glad you enjoyed. Yeah, it's. There is historical. You can Google it, whatever. I'm saying, but I don't know if there's a clear absolute.
I understand that the Pharaoh was sort of like an elected position, not like a birthright.
No, the pharaohs were gods. Gods are not elected. Yeah, gods are not elected. Yeah, I don't think so. Thank you, Art. I'm glad you enjoyed. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Sloan. Correct. Thank you, Laurie. Good night, everyone. Laila Tov. Hopefully see you B'ezrat Hashem next week. Thank you, Miyakel. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Junia. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Gail. Does this apply to our country also? Applies to every one of us, Gail. Applies to every one of us. And perhaps to our leadership also, who can't admit when they've gone too far, perhaps. Hope you all enjoyed. Laila Tov. See you next week, God willing.